So it's 6:35, and I will get this party started. Thank you all for coming tonight. What we are doing here is this is a listening session on a potential restriping of Stanley Street. We're going to get the directors to talk about what that means exactly, what a 4-3 conversion or a road diet is, and then I'll give you an idea of what it's designed to do. There's a potential layout. This is by no means an engineering study. It's just, will the lines work? So those are posted up here, and you can take a look at those. It also shows like a cross section, so you can kind of see what it would look like. There have been advocacy groups that have had meetings regarding road diets and 4-3 conversions. This is the first official city listening session, so we've got the ball rolling in the city now. There seemed to be enough interest in it where we thought we would start exploring that. Anything that the city does is typically a pretty long process, and it's done purposefully. The longer we give people to share their ideas, to provide input, the time we give our engineers to do traffic studies, road design, we get all these questions answered and vetted. And right now what we're looking for is concerns. We're not here tonight to debate the merits of a 4-3 conversion or whether it's a good or bad idea. We as a city are not here to convince you one way or the other. What we're looking for is input, your thoughts. The people in attendance range widely. We did direct mail every person that owns property on the stretch of Stanley Street and then one house back. I know that there are people from other areas of the community. I know there are people from outside the community that have attended tonight, and we welcome all of that input. Really, this is our chance to listen. This is the first of probably several meetings that we're going to have. And again, what we're looking for tonight is input, your thoughts. What if? Have you thought of this? What happens if this happens? And we're going to take all of that input and we're compiling it. Now, I've got a folder started already of emails and letters that I have received. I know there's a couple of alderpersons who have those, so we're going to take those back and we're going to try and get all of those questions answered and vetted. So our engineers are going to look at it and take your concerns under consideration. I know we have several alderpersons here, and that's good. It's also being recorded, so those who could not make it or chose other obligations will have an opportunity to review this video on the city website, and we'll also be playing it on cable access and our low-power radio station 105.9 coming up in the near future. I would ask that the alderpersons listen to all of the people and the comments that we have here tonight. The alderpersons have talked about it, and there will be many more opportunities for the alderpersons to talk about this. This is not an opportunity for me to tell you anything other than what we're presenting here tonight as far as the facts. Trying to get an idea of what this is and how it will work. So I would ask that the alderpersons take this opportunity to listen, and one of the things that I think is important tonight is that we just take the input. I don't want to get into a debate, especially among attendees, of the merits for or against the road diet. I don't want a debate going on amongst the attendees. We're going to take comments. Everybody's comments should be respected, even if you disagree with them. We're going to try and maintain some decorum here. We're looking for comments and input, and I would ask that because of that, anyone who speaks after the presentation come up to the podium and use the microphones. They're for amplification and for our video and recording that we're going to be doing, so everybody who's not here tonight also has an opportunity to hear your questions and your comments. A couple of things that we've talked about internally so far. There were some questions relating to transit, buses, there are bus stops on there, and they have concerns about getting into and out of traffic when there's only one lane. Right now there's two, so vehicles can go around them. We talked to the fire department. They don't seem to have any concerns over a lane reduction. The police department, as long as the roads remain the same width, they also don't have any problems with it. Same with the sheriff's department. We asked all of these people for input based on a proposal that may or may not happen in this manner. Right now what we're talking about is just restriping. No construction to the road, no removing of curbs, no narrowing or widening of the road, no improvements to the intersections. We're looking at just the conversion from 4 lanes down to 3. We have crash data, and Director Schatzsnyder is going to be talking about that a little bit. We're going to be taking that crash data and evaluating how it happens. We have to go through, it's a little labor intensive because we know that an accident happened. We don't necessarily know if it was involving a turn, if the subject was intoxicated, if it was a head-on or a T-bone. We're going to try and figure out where those accidents are happening and why. I can tell you that in 5 years, there have been 2 bicycle-related accidents on that stretch of Stanley Street. Boy, I think that's about it. Again, we're going to have a short presentation from our directors, Scott and Kyle, and they're going to talk to you a little bit about what a 4-3 conversion is, and then maybe some generalities in relationship to Stanley Street. At that point, then I will be calling people up here to hear your comments. We also have sheets available. If you prefer to write your comment down tonight, you can certainly do that and slip it in the box there, or you could turn it into myself or one of the directors. If something comes up after the meeting, feel free to email me, contact my office, send a letter to my office, your alderperson, the directors. We want to have as much input as we can. We want to make sure that we cover all of the bases when we're looking at this project. If it seems like the community wants to move forward on it, then we'll take the next step. Director Schatzsnyder has already contacted the Department of Transportation to see if they would give us a recommendation based on traffic counts or anything. The DOT will not give us a recommendation on this 4-3 conversion for this stretch of Stanley Street because it doesn't affect them. If we were going past the interchange, then they would have input on it, but they said it's a local decision and they're going to leave it up to us. They're not making a recommendation one way or the other. Before we get started, does anybody have any immediate questions on anything I've covered? Okay, with that then, I'm going to turn it over to Kyle and Scott and let you get into the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Kyle. I'd like to first thank everyone for being here. I appreciate the attendance tonight. So we're just going to get started here. A few of my comments may seem a little bit redundant at the beginning here, but from a staff perspective, I feel it's important that we get our message out to all the folks that are here. And so the first question I have is, so why are we here? The reason we're here tonight is because there have been citizens that have reached out to staff and to Common Council members, and as a result, some of the Common Council members have reached out to staff to look at the possibility of considering a 4-3 lane conversion on Stanley Street. The question basically has been asked, can Stanley Street do more than just move vehicles? And that's going to be part of our analysis. And the best way to start that consideration is with a public involvement meeting. And I want to stress the word involvement. Tonight, with all of these folks here, it just proves that involvement is going to be important. And for everyone that is here, you are involved in this process. So thank you. City staff sent out 233 invitations to property and business owners along the corridor. Our goal this evening is to listen to you on what you have to say about this process. Staff recognizes a lane conversion is a very hot button topic. I'm assuming that there are folks here that have strong opinions either for or against. Professionally, it reminds me of roundabout discussions 15 years ago. It has that exact same feeling, right or wrong. So with that being said, Kyle and I have about a 25-minute presentation. We're going to go through it, and then Kyle and I are going to listen, and we'll go from there. Like the mayor said, we foresee future meetings to move further along with this, regardless of which way we go. So I guess we'll get started. Thank you, Kyle.
Yep.
All right.
Can I read this?
Sure, just in case.
Chime in here.
Okay. Our agenda, we're going to have a brief introduction. Can everyone still hear me okay?
Scott, would it make sense to introduce yourself to
Sure. Sorry. I'm the Director of Public Works.
My name's Kyle Kearns. I'm the Associate Planner for the City of Stevens Point and the Zoning Administrator.
Our agenda for the evening is very straightforward. Introductions are over. We're going to talk a little bit about the existing right-of-way, some lane reconfigurations, some street design, and then it's going to be input and feedback. Whoops. Stanley Street, existing Stanley Street. It was constructed in 1993. In 1993, the ADT was 10,400 vehicles. The projected ADT by DOT for 2013 was 17,000. City staff went out and counted in 2016. We did 12-hour counts, and we counted in 2 spots, 2 intersections. Obviously, we wanted to count vehicles at Stanley Street and Green, near the interchange, and then we counted again at Stanley Street in Michigan. Obviously, there are more cars towards the east end of the corridor than there is towards the west end. For anyone that's been on the DOT website, they have on their website they have traffic counts from 2004 approximately. Their numbers are a little bit different, and the reason their numbers are different is they have on their website they have AADT. Whoops, I'm jumping ahead here. I'm going to set that down. They have an AADT. That is different than ADT. When the DOT counts vehicles, that's where they have the tubes across the road, and they count for 48 hours straight. So their counts will also have vehicles that are from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. We counted vehicles from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then what they do is they do a regression analysis, and they tweak those numbers to get an average annual daily traffic, and it goes into considering different seasons and projections and things like that. So if anyone would go to the DOT website and say, hey, their numbers are different than the cities, that's why they're different. The mayor talked a little bit about some of the crashes that we've had out there. We went back 5 years, and there are 90 vehicle versus vehicle crashes. Of those, in addition to those 90 vehicle to vehicle crashes, there are 2 vehicle to bicycle crashes. I think it's something that we can do from a staff perspective. As this moves forward, we would look at some of our other city streets to give this street perspective. How much more dangerous or less dangerous is this corridor than Division or Water or Michigan, to kind of help give it an overall perspective. This was a picture of Stanley Street about 9 o'clock Tuesday morning. This was a picture of Stanley at Fremont looking west. This was this morning. I believe that's at Clayton. And this was, I think at Minnesota. I don't know if it was in Minnesota or not, but Frontenac, thank you. Illinois, looking west. This is going to be hard to see, and I apologize. These typical sections are on the wall. And just bear with me, this top one is existing typical section. If we took Stanley Street and we just cut it and kind of looked at the middle of the sandwich, if you will, and this is from basically Clayton Avenue going east. And what we have is pretty much what everybody knows. We have 2 12-foot lanes on the inside, and then we have 2 12-foot lanes on the outside to give us our 4-lane undivided. The bottom is Stanley from Fremont to Michigan, and we have 2 18-foot driving lanes. So that's currently what's out there. Lane configurations. What is a lane configuration? And for us not to drill down deep into the details, basically this is what it is we currently have a 4-lane undivided. We're taking the exact same space and we're creating a middle turn lane. It's called a 2-way left turn lane, commonly referred to as a twiddle. That's what a twiddle is. And then you would have, for our project, you'd have a eastbound and a westbound, and then you would have, extra space out here for, you could have bike lanes, parking, whatever that additional space may be. Facts on a lane configuration. I'm just going to run through these. If folks want me to bring them up later, I can. We have reduced conflict points. Obviously, that makes sense because we're reducing the number of lanes, so there's less conflict points. Improved sight lines, and we have a picture to explain some of this stuff later on. Less difficult crossing maneuvers, lower and more uniform speeds. Traffic demands can still be met. Improved conditions for other modes of transportation, whether it's pedestrians, parked vehicles, bicycles. It supports local businesses. Opportunities for green features, improving corridor aesthetics, and minimum costs and impacts. So let's get into a few of those top bullet points. Safety. On average, according to the Federal Highway Administration, when we go from a 4-lane to a 3-lane, obviously we're dropping a lane, and so the number of conflict points naturally go down. The diagram here is pretty busy, so I'll go through it. Up here, we're talking about rear end collisions. Here, we'd be talking about a weaving condition where somebody is stopped and you want to get around them. So that's a weaving collision. Here, it would be someone going east, making a left-hand turn, and you have conflicts with oncoming vehicles going westbound. A 3-lane, obviously there's still conflicts. You have if we were going eastbound, we'd have a rear end here. Going west, we'd have a rear end here. And then there is obviously if folks are coming west and want to go be to the south, and if someone's going east and want to go to the north, you have this head-on scenario. But overall, Federal Highway, with the number of conversions that they've had across the country, this data, this reduction, in every source, that those percentages are referenced. Reduce conflict points for going through an intersection. Obviously, a 4-lane undivided. There are a number of conflict points. Given the folks going eastbound, westbound, with a 3-lane, the number of conflicts, are reduced. So that's the gist of this, is just to stress that fewer lanes, fewer conflict points, fewer potentials. Sight lines. I think this one is really helpful. In a 4-lane undivided, making this left, and I think everyone has experienced this in Stevens Point, whether you've been on Stanley or Division or you name the street, this situation occurs. With a 3-lane, you're over, and now you're only trying to navigate that one oncoming lane. Potential negatives. Transit, mail trucks can block, slightly impede traffic when stopped. Reduce speeds, positive or negative. Speed dictated by the slowest driver, no ability to pass. Stanley Street alternative. These show up a little bit better, thank goodness. We called it an alternative. This would be Stanley Street from Clayton, approximately to the east. We'd have a 14-foot twiddle, which is pretty wide. We'd have we'd have a 12-foot lane and a 12-foot lane, and we would have room for 5-foot bike lanes if that was an alternative that was selected. Stanley Street from Fremont to Michigan. It's amazing how much room is actually out there. We have room for an 11-foot twiddle, and then we have 12.5-foot drive lanes. This is the end of it. We stayed pretty high level. There's a ton of information on this. Tonight was not the night to try to dump it all out on the floor and make sense of it. Kyle, what did I forget?
Not much. There's, again, two sides of the story here. There's some positives and there's some negatives no matter how you look at it. I think the biggest catch is that it can improve safety, again, because it has those reduced conflict points. That's a fact, regardless of how you look at it. As Scott mentioned, though, there's a lot more detail that needs to be analyzed before the pursuit of something like this. With that being said, I think we'll open it up to questions now. I want to remind everyone that if you haven't signed in, please sign in on the chart, and that we're here to take input and feedback. We're not going to have a question-answer session, otherwise we'd never get through everyone's comments. We're here to just basically listen, take feedback, and take input. If you have a specific question, I would invite you to put the question in the comment box, provide your contact information, or reach out to Scott and myself, and we can have a phone conversation to try to answer some questions, or an in-office visit to answer some of the specific questions you have, or potentially in the future as we move forward, some of those questions can get addressed at future meetings.
All right, so thank you both very much for the presentation. As was stated, the safety factor is pretty much a given. It reduces the amount of accidents. On every time that I've looked at any sort of road that was done on this conversion, the evidence is there. They do reduce accidents. What we need to do as a city is determine what our goal is on this stretch of road. If the number one goal is safety and reducing accidents, then it probably makes sense to do a 4-3 conversion. If our goal is to make crossing the road easier, I think that's up for debate. If our goal is to make traffic safer for bicyclists and pedestrians, I think this probably is a good idea. But what we want is input from you, what your thoughts are. Some of the people that live there, you have a driveway that you have to get in and out of every day. Some of the comments we received so far are that it is busy in the mornings and the evenings, but the rest of the time it's not as busy. So we're looking for input from primarily the residents. So when we do this, we're going to take all of the information, we're going to take it back and evaluate it and come up with a recommendation. Whether that recommendation is to not proceed with this because there isn't enough support, or we're going to proceed with it and taking into account all of your comments and concerns, we're going to provide a recommendation on the striping and condition of the road. So with that, what I'd like to do, we have a very full room. There's 71 attendees so far, so that's great. We'd like to limit your comments to 3 minutes, and we're going to prioritize them. I want to hear from the residents or property owners on Stanley Street first. And once we've exhausted those, then other users. So once we have the other users exhausted, then I'd open it up for an opportunity for the alderpersons. I know some of them have comments that they want to read, and we'll have those go last. Regardless, all of those comments are going to be taken back to city staff. Like I said, I've already got a folder started, so if something comes up afterwards, by all means, contact my office or your alderperson, and we'll get that comment added. So with that, residents of Stanley Street or property owners on Stanley Street that have comments. Ma'am in the red. When you come up, please state your name and address so we have it on record. That way when we go back in the recording, we can know who we're talking about.
My name is Eva Richter, and I live at 3522 Stanley Street, right across from Quick Trip. I have lived at this address for 44 years, and during this time, I've seen Stanley Street go from a 2-lane to a 4-lane, which I understood was because the state felt that the traffic was so heavy out there, they had to make it a 4-lane. I think changing Stanley Street from 4 lanes to 2 lanes with a turn lane and bike lanes would be a disaster out in my area. We have heavy traffic. There's traffic to and from the city, especially I-39. Many of the vehicles stop at Quick Trip for fuel and etc. This change would make it very difficult for the semi-drivers coming from I-39 into the second driveway to get to the diesel pumps, especially with one lane going east. There are a lot of emergency vehicles that travel through through Stanley Street. The police, the ambulances, fire trucks, squad car, everything. There's a lot of traffic out there with them. And school buses are dropping children off on Stanley Street. Between 7 and 9 a.m. and 3:30 and 5:30 p.m., especially heavy. The traffic is especially heavy as many people from the east of Point and the people traveling on I-39 coming to and from work or school or whatever reason they're coming to Point. I think there's even a greater possibility of accidents out there, and I'm sure I've seen a lot of accidents happen out there. People they're in a hurry to get home or to get to work or whatever, and they pull out in front of cars. I've seen it. And as far as the bicyclists, Stanley Street is not a good area for bicyclists because of the amount of traffic, at least in my area. When the state widened Highway 66, they did leave blacktop shoulders for that bicyclists can use. So I think if you're concerned about safety on Stanley Street, at least down on my end of the street, I think you really should consider reducing the speed limit.
Thank you. Other Stanley Street residents? You, sir, in the red and black jacket?
Hi, I'm Jack Ernest on 2517 Stanley Street. I'm across the street from Partners Pub. I do have problems trying to get into my driveway because people want to turn into Partners at the west end. So there's issues there. So I can't see being changing something that's not broken. We got 4 lanes. We should keep it 4 lanes. They want to change it for kids to ride their bikes. 5 months out of the year we get snow, ice, rain, leaves. We have problems with gutters filling up, and you're getting a lot of splashes out in the road. My boulevard's only 3 feet wide. Snow plow comes through and he plows that all up. And it actually goes out in the road. I can't see where they're going to be able to put a bike trail in there with the snow going out. Do kids ride these bikes during the winter? It's a waste of time. You're spending $400,000 to paint the road. Is it worth it? What are they going to do when they repair the road? We have bad roads there on Stanley Street. It gets repaired often. What they're going to do? They're going to close one lane down so we can drive in the center lane? At least this way we could go either way. You know, we got one lane that we still travel in. Roads are busy during the morning and the evenings. But so are kids going to college. I mean, how are they going to go on the trails and stuff when vehicles are busy going back and forth? There's going to be more conflict there. The roads is going to get dangerous. I see this as a guinea pig job here. I mean, they're using this as an example to see if it's going to work. I mean, this is a busy road. Why change it? I can't see it being an issue, you know, like one of these back streets, like Water Street. I don't see Water Street being as busy as Stanley Street. I hear say that they reduced it down to 7,000 vehicles, you know, but there's still a lot of traffic there. It's just not middle of the day, like they took a picture of it. I don't know what time he took it, but it wasn't one of the busy days because he took it right next to my house. I saw it. And I tell you, sometimes I get problems getting out of my driveway and I'm turning right. If I'm turning right, I got to drive all the way to Ellis in one lane. And you know how many people is going to be turning right? I can't go into left lane because that's a turning lane. Unless they allow me to drive in that lane all the way up to by the interstate, then I have time. Otherwise, I'll have to leave a lot earlier just because of one lane. It's not fair to us.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. The project is not estimated at $400,000. Rough estimates right now are only at $50,000. And sorry. Actually, no. The article that was talking about there were street projects. Our director of public works has about $625,000 in street projects that he needs to do, chip sealing and crack filling and those sorts of things. We gave him, the city council authorized $400,000 to spend. I think those were where you got the numbers from. This project, we don't have a solid estimate yet, but initial estimates are right around that 50,000 range. It might be 40, it might be 60. I hope it's 40. But yes, it's still a fair amount of money. I just wanted to make that point, though, that it was nowhere close to 400,000. And if you want to talk about it afterwards, catch me, and I'll be happy to explain all that for you.
I see a lot of leaves and stuff in the gutter, and don't get that off.
Okay. All right. Other Stanley Street residents? You, sir. Right up front. Blue shirt.
Jackson Case, 3028 Stanley Street, right across from Frontenac Avenue. I'm really on the fence about this. I'm not sure which way I'm leaning quite yet at all. I've got a couple of concerns. One concern is right now the way that things operate today, when I'm snow blowing my driveway or doing anything out there, those cars, or even getting something out of my mailbox, those cars that are in the right lane do not move over at all. They stay in that right lane awful close, and it's a hazardous situation right now. So with that in mind, I can see this possibility assisting with that being a better deal, all right? On the other hand, trying to cross the road, just getting out of my driveway and crossing onto Frontenac Avenue, right now with the 2 lanes going each direction, it kind of spreads cars out a little bit more. And I have to imagine that that's going to get much worse if they're all in a single lane going in each direction. Things would just get much tighter. And I think crossing Stanley Street would be much more difficult. And I don't know this, but I think that's something that we really need to kind of find out how this is going to be rectified, or what we're going to do about this if we do come to this single lane in each direction idea. Right now, turning into my driveway from, I don't know, going from either direction, or actually coming from going to the west, going to the east and then turning in, as I'm out in the road waiting for oncoming traffic to go by, there's a lot of times where cars just don't even see that I'm stopped in the middle of the road there, and they get awful close, and it's, I don't know, I'm kind of waiting to get rear-ended out there. So I guess I can see this would help that too. So there's a number of issues, but I don't have an opinion on which way I'm leaning on this yet, but I don't know. Crossing Stanley Street is an issue right now, and I don't see that getting much better. And it's not just at one time of day or another. It's pretty much any time of the day. It gets pretty difficult to cross there, especially if you're walking. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. There was someone else over here. There was a resident. You, sir, in the red shirt.
My name is Dave Wysocki. I do not reside on Stanley Street, but I operate a business on Stanley Street. A couple of things that I've noticed is the bikes have gotten a lot of ink. Today, for example, I saw 2 bikes go down. My office looks right directly out at Stanley Street. 2 bikes went by. Both of them were on the sidewalk, which is legitimate for them to do. So we're providing bike lanes and reducing traffic lanes. Before our last meeting, the Dog and Pony Show about a month and a half ago, I knew this was coming up, and I didn't have a lot of face-to-face clients that day, so I watched out the window. I was at my desk working. That was a great day. It was like 72, 73 degrees. sunny, 15 bikes between 8 o'clock in the morning and 4:30 in the afternoon. So we're going to reduce a whole lane of traffic, reduce 2 lanes of traffic so we can give 15 bikes on a great day in September a chance to get through. College students very seldom use Stanley Street. They all live on 4th Avenue. They go down 4th Avenue, which is smart for them to do. I'll hand it to the college kids. They aren't going to come out to Stanley Street and go down Stanley Street to get to the university. That's not going to happen. For the buses, the people, there is one honeycomb apartment which a lot of our college students that is on the south side of Stanley Street. Those are the kids that ride the bike on the south side of Stanley Street on the sidewalk. A lot of the kids that ride the city bus, there are more people ride the city bus than ride bikes, believe me. City buses stopped at their parking spots or their pickup spots. How much traffic's got to stop behind them without the ability to go by? Garbage trucks, recyclable trucks, they're wider than this bike lane. Everybody's going to have to stop behind them. And bing, 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 especially those garbage trucks, they stop at every lot. You got to think about that. That's the main part of it is that's a main thoroughfare into the city, and we need to keep the traffic moving. I do have an issue. My office is right near the corner. I'm one lot away from the Minnesota Stanley Street intersection. I can see that's a tough one. University gets out, hospital gets out, Spash gets out. There's a ton of traffic there in the morning. There's a ton of traffic there at night. Ever think of traffic signals? These college students that I talked about riding the city bus, there's a bus stop right in front of the BP station. Those kids will walk down to the corner and cross the street, which they do. I handed to them. They do use the crosswalk. But I tell you what, maybe you ought to think about doing some sort of traffic control at that intersection that do 2 things: provide the safety, and people see traffic lights, whether it's flashing or operating the whole time, they're going to slow down. I've got plenty of other comments. I'll leave it at that for right now.
Thank you, Dave. There was one in the back. Ma'am? Blue shirt.
Lorelei Walchik, 3628 Stanley Street, just slightly east of the Quick Trip. You gave us a number for the amount of traffic going through there every day, 11,000, some ADT. ADT stands for what? I don't know. Average daily total. I was assuming, okay. So is that considered a high amount of traffic? You didn't comment whether or not that was, I mean, living on the highway for 30-some years that I have, it's very, very busy. And I have to agree with the other gentleman when you took the pictures to see these empty streets. Maybe that was your purpose, to show an empty street, you know, just to show the street better. I wasn't certain of that. But my concern is the amount of traffic there, the enormous pulp trucks that come through there. I also am an avid cyclist, so I see that avoiding Stanley Street on the bicycle most of the time makes a good point. So my question also was whether or not the lane on the side is for bike lanes. I believe in the portion of your introduction you had mentioned that it could be available for a number of different purposes, but I don't think you really stated what the purpose of that was.
Correct.
What? Okay, if that was what it was for. And also, if that were to happen, what the speed limit would change to? That it would be lowered, but we didn't get any input as to what it would be lowered to. So just, you know, basically most of my concerns were addressed by some previous people, but I was just curious about that. And you know, mainly there's a massive amount of semis and very big pulp trucks that come through there that really need to be looked at quite closely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other residents? In the back, you, sir.
My name is Jeremy Nimchek. I live across the street from Partners Pub, 2617 Stanley. The picture everybody was referring to was the 9 o'clock Tuesday. That's convenient timing, is what that is. It's busy. I'd like to know what the data is, with all your data you have here, of people backing out of the driveway and the danger involved in that. My fiance got in a wreck backing out of our driveway once already. It happens. My sister has been in a wreck on that street because of traffic. I don't get it. I'm trying to keep my composure here, folks. I'm sorry. I think it's dangerous. I think it's flat out dangerous. There was also a picture up here about the left turn and your point of view in the point sights. You failed to mention the bike lane behind the car turning left. That's also something you'd have to look for. Nobody mentioned that. I don't know. I don't want to let my emotions get a hold of me here, so I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. One second, I just got to write down this last comment here. Okay, more residents? You, sir.
My name is Wade Wolquit. I live at 3318 Stanley Street. I work a night shift job that starts at 6 p.m. conveniently in Wausau. I leave at 5:10 every day. I own a V8 truck, thank God. A little Ford Banger would not be able to get across there at 5:10. I also own a 26-foot camper that I need to get out into that turning lane. That's not going to happen. It will not happen. My camper will be out in your lane. For a few bikes, I don't get it. Period. I have 2 children. I want to know, guys, are you guys going to come and console them when they're washing blood off of the street because some bicyclist gets killed out there? I'm sorry. This is an absurd idea. I don't even know why we're even in here tonight. There are businesses that have trucks coming out of there, backing off of the highway. This is just ridiculous. And for anybody to think that it's a good idea, you got your head up your culo.
Thank you. More residents? Yes, sir. Mr. Ostrowski.
Hi, folks. Bob Ostrowski, 516 Michigan Avenue. I'm one of your stepchildren, the house one off. I live on a street that has some of these problems. Michigan Avenue, corner of Michigan and Stanley. I hear what you folks are saying. My concern, you guys are more experts on that end of the street. I can give you another point of view. Try turning into St. Michael's Hospital, narrowing that entryway. It ain't going to happen, in your words, sir. Traffic comes to a dead halt now at about 8:10 in the morning when people are trying to get to the hospital and cars are trying to squeak through, and the snow pile is now a foot out into the street. That isn't going to work. 3-lane is not going to work from Fremont to Michigan. And the intersection that I'd like to talk about, that I think I'm an expert on because I have seen enough of it, living at my address since 1971, Michigan Avenue and Stanley Street. You take a 52-foot logging truck loaded to the beam, coming in at 30 miles an hour, turning that corner. You're going to narrow that? And then you're going to wait for the cars behind it to park, and they got to get to the university, they got to get to a hospital. They're going to try squeaking through. And again, the snow has started to work its way out into the street. The other thing is, and I have talked to the police and fire department myself, asked their opinions, but I can tell you this, a fire truck, a hook and ladder fire truck coming north on Michigan Avenue is not going to make the turn onto Stanley to go towards the hospital if you narrow that at all. It certainly ain't. It's certainly not going to make that turn. So I appreciate what they said about Stanley, about the eastern end, but I mean, on the western end, I can tell you one thing. That can't be narrowed up. I don't believe it can. The other thing is the time of day and that I watched on this, I don't think you can make that judgment based on one 12-hour period. You would have to do it every day for a 12-hour period and probably over a couple of different months. That is not enough information to make a decision on. Any one day that could happen. Try that February after we've had an 8-inch snowfall and try making those turns, as you mentioned, sir. So thank you.
Thank you. More residents? Yes, sir, young man? I guess not. There was one back here in the back. Yes, sir, ma'am. It's okay, you can talk to me afterwards, young man. It's okay with your dad?
Hello, everybody. My name is Megan Mapes Martins. I live one off of Stanley Street. Gratified to see a lot of my neighbors here. Brandy, a long time. And pleased to hear that some of the same concerns about safety are on the minds of my neighbors. That's what brought me here tonight. I'm a longtime resident of the neighborhood, just with a gap in there. I grew up on Price Street, and I remember riding my bike from Price Street across Stanley. I'd go to Thrifty Market to get milk and bread for my parents. And the traffic numbers up there, whether they represent every day, I don't know, but that resonates with me because I've seen the 4 lanes bringing higher speed traffic, and what I read was called the Frogger effect, which I've experienced. I bike, I drive, and I walk very frequently because I'm always using the amenities between Schmeekly, and there's a market across Stanley from my side. There's a new restaurant over there I'd love to go to more, an accounting place that I understand the gentleman's here tonight. And it's a barrier for a pedestrian. It's very unsafe because the Frogger effect means trying to cross, especially at Minnesota, you will potentially get partway across in the vehicle that so kindly slowed from 45 miles an hour down to the speed limit so that you could maybe get across. The car behind them maybe didn't see that you were coming and they're speeding. And I'm pretty fit, you know, for my age, I think, and I can get across, but kids, elderly people, it's scary, and I think a lot of people avoid it due to the safety concerns with that. I forbid my children to cross, even if I'm with them. I feel unsure that I can drag them across in time if there's going to be that Frogger effect happening, and unless they're in a stroller strapped in, I feel like I can't get them across, and I think we can do better, hopefully. Regarding down the road a ways, Mrs. Richter, my best friend's parents live down your way on that street, and I used to cross over Stanley to try to get to Quick Trip, and you know, it was different back then and certainly is stressful with all those big trucks and the traffic. I think there's less traffic now with the changes that have gone on with the highway system, but yeah, it's a concern. And again, my main concern is safety, and if this is going to make it better for us residents, driving, biking, and walking, and our kids especially, then I think we should do it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, other residents? Last call for any residents, either on Stanley Street or one house off. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Julie Schneider. I live at 2700 Peck Street. I guess I'm 3 removed from Stanley Street. Across that intersection that people have mentioned, Michigan and Stanley, almost every day. Take a walk in Schmeekley every day. Go to the same markets that the one before me mentioned. I guess I didn't know it was a biker thing. I thought it was a safety thing, and I thought I understand the concerns of people who live on Stanley, and I don't have to worry about backing in and out. But if overall, from what I heard from this presentation, reducing the lanes will make it traffic slower and will slow things down and make it safer overall, then I guess I think it's a good thing to do. I feel for the people that live on Stanley and might have problems getting in and out of their driveways and worry about those other concerns, but my understanding of the presentation was that it will overall increase safety because traffic will be slower. So that's why I think it seems like a good thing to do.
Thank you. Any other residents? Yes, sir.
My name's Mark Bellhorn. I live in the same house with her. And I ride my bike probably 3 or 4 times a week. I ride it to school almost every day, to work. I'm not a kid, I'm an old man. So what I'm trying to say is that I ride my bike for transportation. And I don't ride on Stanley that often because I don't have reason to go down Stanley very often. But when I do, once I get to Michigan Avenue and I'm heading east, I get on the sidewalk because it's too dangerous. But the thing is that the policeman that was here last time, it's not just my opinion, the policeman who was here last time said it's not safe to ride your bike on the sidewalk because when you go to cross the side streets, cars don't look for you. But I do anyway on Stanley because I think my odds are better. So I guess what I'm saying is that if there were a bike lane, I could ride in the street, whether it's necessary or not, I don't know, but it would help bikers. And maybe there would be more people riding their bikes on Stanley Street if there were a bike lane.
Thank you. Any other residents? Or sled it off? Hold on. No other residents? Okay, then we will move on to other users of Stanley Street. Yes, sir. Go across.
Hi, I'm Tom Brown. I live on 317 6th Avenue, so I live way over on the west side of town by Buchholz Park. But I also own some property out 66 a ways, and so I do drive the Stanley Street corridor a lot. And from my neighborhood, there's 3 ways of doing it: 4th, Maria, or North Point. All 3 of them involve, at some point, Stanley Street. And trying to get out and cross, or even get onto Stanley Street from any of those 3 intersections, not so much from 4th, is a problem for me, mostly because with 4 lanes of traffic, and the way that wide open, I mean, it's a huge road. You know, it's really kind of disappointed the city ever built a road that big, but they did. And you have to wait for like all the cars because you can't tell which lane the cars are that are coming down the road. If they're about a block away or something like that, I can't tell if they're in the left-hand lane or the right-hand lane, so I got to wait for them both. If it was a 3-lane, and basically if I see a car, I wait for a gap and then I can pull out. So crossing or merging is a big problem now. I think that up at North Point Drive by Scaffidi's there, if the roundabout they're talking about ever happens, that'll be a good thing there. So I think it's a little unfortunate that some people seem to think that this whole thing is for bikers. I bike a lot too, but I mostly do my commuting towards downtown from the west side of town and the north side. It's true that there is a bicycle pedestrian advocacy group in this community. I'm not part of that organization, but they have been lobbying for some traffic calming measures and for more bike lanes and things like that, and it would certainly help them there. But I think safety is the more important consideration here. And when I hear people talking about the problems with it being narrower and trucks can't make turns and fire trucks and whatever, those are all legitimate concerns. It sounds like some of those have been addressed, at least by the emergency services people, but I think we have to remember that they're not physically talking about reducing the size of the highway. All the space that's there now will still be there, and emergency vehicles, and if you look at one of these handouts that were out on the table, emergency vehicles will do what they have to do to get through. They'll go in the left-hand lane, the right-hand lane, they'll go up on the sidewalk. So as far as turning for those types of vehicles, I don't think that should be a big issue. As far as the speed limit, you know, posting a sign to reduce the speed limit, when a highway looks like it should be driven at 45 miles an hour, people drive at 45 miles an hour. When a highway looks and feels like it should be driven at 20, people will drive at 20. So a smaller highway will cause people to be slower. Is that my time limit? All right, so just to finish, basically, one thing that wasn't addressed was, and it was in the very first slide or two, the opportunity for aesthetic improvements. If this would be applied to other roads in the future, I really think that that center lane could make Stevens Point a prettier place. So I'm for this idea.
Thank you. You, sir, front.
All right, Scott Wynn, 624 Sumery Avenue. Apologize for having to step out. I had to go pick up a child and get them home. We like to cross over and go to Schmeekely all the time. I'm a biker. My kids are bikers. I'm an advocate outdoors person. My in-laws, my kids' grandparents, they live on Wilshire. So the question ultimately begs me to say is, okay, I need to get my kids from the south side of Stanley Street down to Wilshire. Where's a safe place to cross? Where's a crosswalk? The nearest crosswalk is Minnesota Avenue. Well, I get them across Minnesota Avenue. Now how do they get to Wilshire? There's no sidewalk on that side of the street. Tom just said it's driven like a highway. If you look at McDill Avenue that was just redone, I drive that every once in a while, and yeah, I have a lead foot when I drive. I do. But I've been trying to drive the speed limit as I drive down McDill or any other places with 35. I'm watching the cars just pass me. And it's just paint, people. The road is not getting any narrower. So the idea of, hey, let's put it out there. If it doesn't work, it's paint. Down the road, we can redo it. But I mean, I look at it and say, I don't see the traffic that's out there that begs the idea that it's warranted to have 2 lanes on each side. So ultimately, I want to say is, for me to think about is how to get from the south side of the street to the north side of the street. Really, if I had a crosswalk down on by Quick Trip, it's pretty darn dangerous with how people drive that road, even though if it's 35 mile per road. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, yeah.
Hi, my name is Cindy Nabel, and I live near the campus, 1100 Phillips Street. And I'm not sure I've heard some really good questions that are against it. I really have, and I'm hoping that there'll be some resolution to finding some answer to those. But I agree that the street isn't going to get smaller, and I'm hoping that some of those issues could be looked at. I'm not sure if it's possible, and if you're backing out of your driveway, that you can back out into the bicycle lane. You can't? Okay, so that wouldn't be it. So that was one of my questions. The other thing is that I guess I look at it from being right near campus, how much problems there are with our area with bikers and skateboarders and walkers and then cars. And we don't have a bigger area, and it's pretty full. And as I walk out of my house and go onto my sidewalk, I can get hit almost every day by somebody going by fast on their bikes on the sidewalk. And my granddaughter has almost gotten hit, when we've been together, because you just don't hear anybody. They just zoom. So being on the sidewalk seems to be pretty dangerous, in my view, for bikers, and it's all, for anybody that's walking, even for bikers to be on that. And the second thing is that we have such a big problem right now with the campus losing more and more parking spaces, we have more people that are going to have to come up with alternative ways to get to their classes. Off of Stanley Street is a huge area of student rental apartments, huge amounts of them. So I look at that and think there's going to be less and less chances for these kids to just go from there and get onto one of our buses, or to drive their car in and find a spot closer, which a lot of people like to do. They don't want to have to. I think we're going to have an increase in people needing to bike or walk. And though we don't have a lot of people, maybe you see all the time riding their bikes on Stanley, I don't never go on it. And I'm not a big time rider, but when I go, there's no way. I don't want to be on a sidewalk either. Cars don't look for you when they're backing out of their driveways. You're better off if you're in the street, because then people look for a car when they're backing out, but they're not always looking on the sidewalk to see if somebody's on the sidewalk. So I just think we're going to have to look at some alternative ways. We've got to do some kind of changes and try something. Being that it's paint, it can go back. It's not going to be a permanent thing. I think it's just important because things are changing, and we do need to get that traffic slower on that highway. Stanley Street is really bad coming off of the highway, and you come in there. I often get almost hit coming across, and that's how I get back from the Plover side of anything to come back to my area in campus. And it's very dangerous when you get off of there and you're waiting to see which cars, and you have to look over those 4 lanes, and like someone said, you can't tell what lane they're in. So you get out there and you can get hit easily. So I think we got to look at the safety part of it and then try to really figure out what we can do for the other issues that are going to cause for the people that are living on Stanley Street, because I do feel for them too. I can understand their concerns also. So thank you.
Thank you. And next. You, sir. Hope that didn't happen on the way here.
No. But it did happen from biking, so what can I say? I'm Will Stice. I live at 425 Buchholz Avenue, and I do quite a bit of biking. I'm a driver too, I suppose more a driver than a bicyclist. But I would like to use Stanley Street to bike on, and I'm a pretty bold cyclist, so I could bike out there. I wouldn't really be too scared to do it, a little bit scared, but it's very unpleasant because cars are crowding you. Some of them don't know whether to pass you in the right lane, to get in the other lane, or what to do. So I would use Stanley Street more if it had the 3 lanes plus 2 bike lanes. And I think a lot of people who don't use Stanley Street at all and actually are more afraid of it than might be justified would use it for a bike route, because there are ways to get around using Stanley Street if you're heading out that way, but they're inconvenient, they're not direct, and there are more stop signs in the way. So it's just, it would be more convenient and more pleasant for cyclists if we used this plan. And I think you'd have more bikes on Stanley Street than the, 2 or 15 per day than we're seeing now. And that might be beneficial to some of the businesses out there. So thanks to everybody from the city and council members who have listened to what the people have to say tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else? You, sir. Honestly, I know about half the people in this room, so I'm trying to remain impartial.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Moore. I live at 317 Division Street North. I served on the city council for 15 years. I think the point being missed right here this evening is the city does not have money for this. How many people have come up here and said it's just paint? $50,000 for just paint? We don't have a problem right there. Stanley Street corridor works right now. We have other streets in this community that are in far worse shape. We hired a director of public works to determine which ones of those roads needed to be fixed and put them in an order to get it done. They're already behind. This did not make the list because it's not necessary. This is a want, not a need. If I was on council right now, I could not justify $50,000 for an experiment when we have other properties, other roads in this community that need work on them that actually need it. So keep that in mind.
Thank you. You, sir.
Hi, my name is Bob Walensky. I also live on Division Street, at the corner of Wisconsin and Division, in my 40th year on Division Street. And again, thanks again to the mayor and all the support folks for having this forum. I've just got a couple points. One is a real problem we have on Division Street, and I'd love to have this on Division Street, by the way, is our garbage cans. Where do the garbage cans go on Stanley? On Division Street, they're halfway into the sidewalk. Now, I know that Stanley only has sidewalks on one side, and I know you've got a lot of grass over there. We don't have this on Division Street. But one question I have, and I don't know the answer, how does this relate to the ever-present garbage cans in the city? I also have the concern, I'm on Stanley Street at least 3 times a week, and going out that way to various places, and it's a racetrack. It's at least as bad as Division Street. I don't know why the speed limit's not enforced, personally, but I think that the one point was made, if a highway looks like it's meant to do 50 miles an hour, people will do 50 miles an hour, and it's better than Division with the bobbing. I mean, it's the weaving, and of course, that's what causes the accidents. And as far as it working the way it is, it didn't work for 90 vehicles over the past 5 years. It didn't, and how many, who got injured, and what were the damages? So the fact that it's working, I mean, it's sort of working. It's working, but I know the research is clear on greater safety when you go to a 2-lane highway because there's no bobbing. I mean, I just hate driving Division Street, and I hate Stanley Street, a little less. But they're the main corridors, and I think that. I mean, it's an experiment, and it does cost money, and I'm a taxpayer, and I don't like to pay taxes. But the research is clear on the safety, and I'm sick and tired of the weaving in and out, and it looks like it has a possibility to do that. But who knows? I mean, I know it's worked in other towns, but who knows if it'll work here? Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for paying your taxes. I appreciate that. Other users? Other users? Okay, then we'll move on to the next segment. And I appreciate everyone's input. Now, I know that both Kyle and Scott were vigorously taking notes. I have that too, and we always have the video to come back on. We've also accumulated already a stack of comments from people who could not be here, whether that was through email or a letter or some phone calls. I know that the director has fielded several, I have several, and I know that some of the alderpersons have several also. Those concerns are every bit as valid as every single one of yours. I think we've got a lot of good information here, several concerns, and there were a few running themes. I've got probably a half a page of things that we're going to need to work on, and by we I mean you. That we're going to have to work on over the next couple of weeks to try and formulate some sort of recommendation. We won't have that for a while, probably several weeks. We're in the middle of our operational budget right now. So the goal here, though, is to take all the feedback, bring it back, investigate it, find some answers, and then we'll have another session, public session, to give you the results of what we found. It looks like we'll probably be doing some additional traffic counts. We will be looking at garbage issues and the trucks and a whole list of things. So with that, I am now going to start calling out the alderpersons. When the alderperson comes up, please state your name, your address, and the district you represent. And I know that you have letters and comments from others, so please let us know who those are and how you receive those comments. So Alderperson Dugan, do you want to go first? We'll suspend the time limit temporarily. There's several.
Yeah, I'm Kathy Dugan, alderperson for District 8, and Stanley Street runs through a lot of District 8. So I've received quite a few comments, and all of them, if they have not yet, will go to the mayor. This is from Diana Strosky, who lives very near Eva Richter. She lives on Stanley Street at that far east end near I-39.
She says, I do not see a need for the lane change in order to accommodate a bike lane. While some streets may benefit, I don't feel Stanley Street is one, at least not as far out as I-39. She says the 4-lane road is heavily used by our first responders, so she was concerned about the emergency vehicles, but it does sound as though some of those questions have been answered. She said there is no comparison to the ratio of vehicles to bicyclists on that road, and it decreases in the winter months, so she is also noticing that there aren't many cyclists. She's concerned that if there are bike lanes and a cyclist gets somehow loses control while in a bike lane, they could very easily fall into a passing car, and I'm sure she's imagining that that car might be going pretty fast. She said, I've heard comments from bikers that say they do not use the existing bike lanes that have already been created on busy roadways because it's too dangerous. Since being retired, I sit in my yard on Stanley Street on a daily basis, weather permitting, at any given time, morning, noon, and evening, and in the 3,000 block of Stanley, I rarely see a bike and an occasional walker. However, I see hundreds of vehicles every day. She feels that the money would be better spent putting a stoplight at Frontenac in Maine. So those are her comments. And that's quite a nice long letter, and she's also sent that to the mayor. Here are some comments from David Rao, who is a resident living a few blocks south of Stanley on Sault Marie. He's also a contractor developing a subdivision at Green Avenue and Sunset Boulevard, and of course Green Avenue, takes people right out to Stanley. He feels that traffic lights are needed at Stanley and Green. He also says Green and Main. Josh, I'm not certain of his last name, from the Nissan dealership, also at Stanley and Green, he sees a few accidents every summer at or near his corner, and that's close to I-39. Jim Buck, he's a local realtor. Some of you may know him. He's a resident east of the interstate highway, way out in the city, near on Oxbow Road. It's way out there, near Pulaski. He of course, uses Stanley to come into town to get to and from. He is also owner of property at Minnesota and Stanley. That's where the Rock and Roll Cafe is located. Society, he says, is moving toward more bicycle transport. And he said it is possible that Stanley needs better safety. Those are his comments. Arlene Meyerhoff, a resident on Wilshire Boulevard, south of Stanley, is often frustrated in her efforts to access Stanley. She thinks it's really difficult. And she's questioning, does our traffic lights the answer? She's thinking they are. Jackson Case is here, and his wife Mary mentioned when I saw the two of them recently of the difficulty turning into traffic on Stanley, which we've heard from people. Marge Malski, however, a former alderperson and a resident on St. Paul Street south of Stanley, says she has no trouble getting onto Stanley. Here is something from Alan Prosser, who lives at 1225 Black Bear Trail. That's out in the Whitetail subdivision off Torren Road, which is in the city. And of course, people there use Stanley a lot to get into town. He says, I would be interested to get the thinking behind the Stanley Street proposal, as well as the statistical information as how the route compares with others in the city regarding accidents and safety, and now we're getting that. That information's coming out. The route handles a large volume of traffic and serving the needs of those drivers is a concern. I am led to believe the DOT has roundabout plans at the interstate. Well, I don't think they have any longer. He said, I believe the city must carefully consider all issues, including cost. He was another person concerned about the cost. When considering any new projects, I'm a firm believer in the if it isn't broken, don't fix it philosophy. This one is from Guy Stewart. I would like to express my support for the idea of changing Stanley Street lane striping from a 4-lane road to a 2-lane road with a bike path. The Stevens Point Pilots Association, I believe he's representing them. He's also a real estate developer. He said the Stevens Point Pilots Association is working to get bicycles to be made available at the airport for folks that fly in and want to enjoy the benefits of the Green Circle, events, and eating establishments. The idea of adding bike lanes on Stanley Street, I think, is a good idea. And I believe the city is working with the Pilots Association on bicycles out there, the mayor told me. Mr. Walensky has already spoken. This is from Tyler Marchant. I hope that you will all support the 4-to-3 lane conversion project on Stanley Street. This is a needed upgrade for safety in the city, as well as a wonderful opportunity to study how this lane conversion might be transferred to Division Street. I live right off Division, and I can't believe the number of accidents that are constantly occurring on this thoroughfare. Please support this needed change, and I believe he has probably contacted other Alder people as well. This is from, well, Julie Schneider and Mark Balhorn, but they've already spoken. And this is from a bicycle enthusiast, Mary Maller. She lives actually on 4th Avenue near St. Peter's Church and School. She was discouraged when at the September Finance Committee meeting, the chairman couldn't see the connection between having bike paths and growing our local economy. The sort of vibrant, creative movers and shakers we want to attract to our community and keep will value these bike lanes. She calls them bike paths. And I think that's it. For my part, I've lived, as I've said before, nearly a quarter of a century in the neighborhood on Summer Street, off of Stanley, very close to Stanley Street, and I'm finding it increasingly difficult to get on and off the street. And as a bicyclist, I am also rather a bold bicyclist. I've been trained as an instructor, so I know how to handle difficult roads, but I don't use Stanley much. In fact, I'm one of those who uses the sidewalk, and I shouldn't. So, thank you.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification there. The DOT has plans in the interchange, the I-39 interchange at Stanley Street, to put in roundabouts. That is still the plan. That plan has been put on hold indefinitely because of cuts to the transportation budget statewide. Any other alderpersons that have comments? Alderperson Shore?
Hi, I'm David Shore. I represent the 2nd District, which is a portion of Stanley. It depends which side, the north or the south. The south side from Michigan to Sault Marie, the north side from Fremont to Minnesota. I don't have nearly as much of Stanley in my district as Kathy Dugan, as Alderperson Dugan, and also have not received nearly as many comments. I don't know whether those two things are related. I received 5 comments. Many of them were sent to all of us collectively. Some of them Kathy just read, and as she noted, we heard this evening, not just from Julie and Mark, but we heard from Megan Mapes Martin, who I also received a message from supportive of the conversion. Kathy also read one from Tyler. I did not bring the text with me for 2 others that I received. One of those from an Aaron, I'm sorry I've forgotten the last name, I think was sent to everyone. One last comment that I might have been the only one to receive. It was opposed to the proposal. Joel, again, I apologize for not remembering the last name, but what I will certainly do, because I do think that I was the only one to receive that, is pass it along to everyone so that we have the full record of comments, as you say.
Okay, thank you. And alderpersons, that's what I need, because we're going to be compiling those so we have one set. We don't want to duplicate any other comments. I know that several of the comments I received, alderpersons were also copied in on them. All of the alderpersons were copied in on them. So we only want one set of those. So when we compile those comments, we're able to keep track of that a little bit easier. Any other alderpersons that have comments from their constituents that they wish to share? Alderperson Johnson?
There. Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Johnson. I am the alder for the 5th District in the city of Stevens Point. I live on the corner of Division and Lincoln, and like those who have spoke about Division, I feel the same way. It would be great to see that changed. I had a couple of comments, mostly from people as I'm walking my dogs, because I'm out in my district quite a bit with my 2 dogs. And the people that I spoke with supported the notion of trying to make Stanley Street safer. Again, this isn't about bike lanes. It's about having a safe transportation corridor. If we can calm it, slow it down. The folks with whom I spoke, many of them are bicyclists, some of them with young children who like to go out to Schmeekly. They feel an avoidance for that area. And that was the sense I got from them, that they don't even like to go out there if they don't have to, but they really like to go because they love to go to Schmeekly, or they love to be on the green circle. So as bicyclists, they said that. One woman said, you know, the traffic goes so fast, I don't even like to drive out there. So it was about driving. So this is a conversation about calming the traffic, slowing it down maybe, so that if there are near misses, they might not happen because people are going slower. I did have one gentleman who addressed me and said he was opposed to it, not because of the notion of trying to slow it down, the traffic and calm the traffic. He's an actual avid bicyclist, but he's concerned about a couple of roads in District 5, primarily Madison, Lincoln, with, like I say, which I live on, and Reserve, which need work. And then the other thing I wanted to note was that the council had approved a policy. It's called Vision Zero. And Vision Zero says, as we start thinking about how we prioritize fixing our roads, building our infrastructure, we'll talk about money, which former Alderperson Moore had spoken about, very critical thing. Also the condition, which Director Schatzschneider is very good at assessing, but also safety. How do we blend those things into a decision-making metric that allows our transportation corridors to move traffic, to move goods, to allow people to stop at our wonderful businesses, restaurants, stores, and also keeps people safe. So that's the conversations I've had with my constituents. Nobody sent me anything. I just have conversations.
Good, thank you. And Alderperson McComb, you had your hand up as well. And again, if anyone has comments after the meeting, send me a letter, send me an email, phone call, contact your alderperson. We will be compiling these into some sort of recommendation eventually. Alderperson?
Hi, I'm Alderperson McComb, Mary McComb from the 9th District. I've had conversations with my constituents too, mostly about Division Street because that goes through part of my district. Some people have said that if it's not broken, we don't need to fix it, or people have pointed out, not just tonight, that there are other roads that need more need more repair than Stanley Street. But I've been wondering about what are our criteria to define broken. It has been defined as roads where the surface is rough, or there's cracks or potholes, or the curbing is deteriorated. But clearly, you can broaden the definition of broken to talk about a street where drivers go too fast, a street that's difficult or dangerous for pedestrians or other autos or bicyclists to cross, a street upon which we see few bicyclists, not because bicyclists don't want to use it, but because it's unsafe for them to use because auto traffic is going too fast. So I'd like to see us enlarge our criteria for what needs fixing. Streets are broken, I think, if they're designed solely for cars to go as fast as the drivers feel they need to go on those streets. To me, that's a broken street. We can fix streets by making them safer for pedestrians to use, for bicyclists to use, even for neighbors to just sit in their front lawn. So I'd like us to think about our criteria for what is a broken road and what kind of conditions need fixing.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Alderperson Oberstadt.
Hi everybody, I'm Heidi Oberstadt from District 4. I believe that almost all of the emails that I received have already been spoken about, although I did receive one phone call from a gentleman who said he couldn't make the meeting, but he is opposed to the conversion because he doesn't see any existing problems with the flow of traffic. So I wanted to share that. And aside from sharing my own thoughts about it, I'm interested in asking some questions about other safety proposals and what they would cost. I know several people had mentioned putting in stoplights, and I'm pretty sure that that is on the higher end of cost of things, but I don't personally know, so I would like to add that to the list of questions, the cost of the additional safety measures that people have asked about. Thank you.
Okay, I think I got everyone. Any other alderpersons wishing to speak? Okay, so what we're going to do from here is we're going to take all of this information back. And we are going to get our professionals, our engineers working on it. I don't know squat about traffic engineering. I don't know anything about building roads. That's why we pay people to do that. So we have our experts look at it. They're going to try and address this list of concerns and questions that we have. And at some point in the near future, hopefully before Christmas, I think we can have another meeting and we can try and answer some of the questions that came up tonight. If we can do that online, we will. I'm not sure how this is going to work out. So we can check the city website. This video will be available on the city website. It will also be available on our YouTube channel. You'll see it on cable access. And again, our low power radio station, 105.9. If someone can't find those things, contact my office or contact your alderperson. We'll send you a link. We'll get it to you somehow. But hopefully we'll get some of these answers up so everybody can see them. And that's terribly distracting. Sorry. Oh, there you go. City contacts. Kyle's email address is much shorter, so maybe we can do that. And then what we'll do is set another time, send out another round of letters to make sure that the people that are going to be directly involved are very much aware of it. This is a citywide issue, so anybody is always invited, and all of their opinions also matter. But it specifically affects these people on Stanley Street, so we want to make sure and direct mail those. The cost of direct mailing everyone in the city would be crazy expensive, so we're not going to do that. But yes, ma'am.
Would it be possible if people got their email address to email that list of people who attended tonight to let them know what?
Yes, that's a good idea. So the question was, when you signed in, most of you gave your email address. We'll have that list of email addresses, and we'll make sure that when we have other meetings or additional input, we will make sure that those email addresses are included in a group. Mr. Brown?
Mayor, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but I understand there's a presentation next week, not by the city, but including city engineers or public works director from Tomahawk.
Yeah, and we'll get to that, Tori, just in a second. We want to make sure we get all the city business taken care of first, and then Tori Jennings is here to talk about an event that they're putting on next week regarding some of this information. Did I cover everything, Director?
Yes. We're going to get with John Quirk tomorrow for our city website and have a Stanley Street link.
Okay.
And we're going to try and get as much information on that as possible, so it's easier for folks to look at it. This presentation will be on there, and it'll give folks another chance to look at it and maybe come up with more questions.
Okay. We also have a mobile app, so for those of you who have smartphones, the Play Store or the Apple Store, iTunes, you can get the Stevens Point City app for your phone. It's still a work in progress, but we're getting there. Our goal is to try and get as much information out to you, the general public, as possible. So we'll have that link on our city webpage, and if anyone ever has questions about this, contact your alderperson, or contact my office or Director Schatzsnyder's office, or Kyle's office. Someone at City Hall will get your question answered or routed at least to the right person. Yes, sir?
Mayor, just a question of information. At the last meeting, there was a video. Is that video available?
At the last meeting, there was a video. Are you talking about the revisioning point videos? I'll let Tori speak to that after we get all of the city stuff taken care of. Any other questions for me before I wrap it up here? Okay, then I'm going to turn it over to Tori Jennings from Revisioning Point, and she'll tell you a little bit about herself and I think about the event, and hopefully she can answer your question about the video that she compiled and where that is. Tori?
Thank you, Mayor. Next Thursday, November 3rd at 6:30 p.m. at Midstate, we have invited down from Tomahawk Mike Tolstead. He's now retired, Director of Public Works up at Tomahawk. He has 42 years of experience in streets and public works, and he implemented the 4th Street 4-3 in Tomahawk. And also attending will be Eddie Shepard from Shawano. Shawano just finished a 4-3 conversion on, I think it's called Airport Road or Airport Drive. So we've invited them to talk about their experiences and to give insights on how 4-3 functions, and that's how we've titled this, 4-3 lane reconfigurations, understanding them. So I have flyers for anyone who would like to attend that. I invite everybody. The meeting has been noticed, so alders and city people can attend it, and I hope staff will be there as well. And the videos, anyone who's interested in obtaining those videos, they're on YouTube, and I can send you those links if you give me your email address. So thank you very much. I hope you attend. Particularly those of you who are skeptical, because by talking with engineers who have actually done these roads, they can answer your questions.
All right. Thank you all very much for coming. If you're interested, we'll have Kyle and Scott available to maybe explain a little bit here. But all of this stuff will be available on the city website. So thank you again for participating in our community.
Videos of the city and county government meetings, seen on community TV, are posted on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos, usually within 1 day of the meeting.